girlfriend of a Boston police officer whose body was found
in the murder trial of Karen Reed after the jury said it was unable to
they
reach
will
a
retry
verdict.
Karen Reed
is
after a judge declared a
Welcome to the Alternate Podcast. I am Tab, and today we are diving into day 33 of the Karen Reed retrial closing arguments. You guys, we finally made it. After 31 days of testimony, the case has come down to final speeches from each side. Judge Beverly Cannoni allotted 75 minutes for each the defense and the prosecution. And as we know, prosecution accuses Reed of striking her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, with her SUV and leaving him to die in a snowstorm. The defense insists that she was framed by corrupt police, aka Michael Proctor and friends, and defense attorney Alan Jackson began the day challenging every piece of the prosecution's case and pleading reasonable doubt. He flatly told the jury there was no collision, accusing investigators of bias and corruption. Jackson portrayed the entire case as tainted from the start. He says this case was corrupted from the start. It was corrupted by bias and conflicts and personal loyalties that you heard about. He specifically blasted lead investigator Michael Proctor, which is no surprise. He told the jury that he was fired for misconduct and urged the jurors to scrutinize all of his handlings. Jackson said there is no direct evidence that ties Reed SUV to this fatal crash. He repeatedly noted that not a single medical expert called by the defense or the Commonwealth has testified that John was hit by a car. Not one. Think about that irony. Jackson also urged that O'Keefe's injuries made no sense for a car strike. A person that was run over by a 6,000-pound vehicle going like 25 miles an hour. No trauma, no broken bones, no fragments, nothing. Not one present on John, none of it. In Jackson's view, O'Keefe's wounds actually suggested a very different story. A hit in the face, a punch, maybe, and dog bites. Dog bites by a family dog that was known to bite, Chloe, her name, that mysteriously disappeared after this incident. No one has seen Chloe since. A beating at Officer Brian Albert's house by possibly Higgins, who actually had a motive. Jackson claims that Higgins was clearly upset when Karen walked into the bar with John, as he texts Karen right away and says, WTF, to which he gets no response from Karen. Then on the video that he pulls up, he plays a video where Higgins is fake fighting Albert. Then you see him look over to John and Albert actually hold or pull Higgins' arm pretty aggressively back, almost looking like he's holding him back from something. Jackson's implying that he's trying to tell John, let's go outside. You know how it goes, bar fight type of situation. I don't know, but it is making sense. After that, Higgins texts John a couple minutes later saying, hey, you coming? Meaning, are you coming to the Alberts? Which is interesting because why would you be texting John, someone that you're not even friends with, and someone that's dating the girl that you want to date? Hey, you coming to the next place? That is sus. Jackson appealed to the jurors' senses of responsibility, also calling them the last line of defense between an innocent woman and a system that has tried to break her, that falsely accused her, and that tried mightily to bury the truth. He reminded them that the defense had asked key questions which were never answered. For example, he noted that the jurors never heard from key witnesses like Michael Proctor, whose controversial notes were simply put in evidence only. He says you weren't given the opportunity to hear from Michael Proctor, but you can read his thoughts for yourself. And so he urged them to read them and even told them they're in Exhibit 209. And he's referring to these text messages sent by Michael Proctor to his group of friends. And he does read some of them. He says that these texts to his friends not only remark on Karen's looks, her demeanor, but that he is going to make sure, and he says that Proctor says he's going to make sure she goes down, meaning Karen Read, for this crime that he doesn't even really know about because it was before he did any research, any investigation, anything in the case. Michael Proctor is sending text messages to his friends saying that he is going to pin this on Karen Read. Jackson then brings up witnesses and tells the jury to look at the attitude of these witnesses that they have seen on the stand. Make a conclusion of your own. Are they believable or are they just protecting themselves? He says, look and see, are they independent? Do they have any skin in the game? Jackson's closing was essentially a call for the jurors to convict only on proof, not on unspoken assumptions, and he stressed again and again that the prosecution's story had holes, literally and figuratively, and that the benefit of the doubt must go to Karen Read.
Could you ever say to yourself, this is justice? The fact is there was no collision. A car did not kill John O'Keefe. So I ask you, let your voice be heard, not in whispers, but in truth. Let the community feel, through your verdict, that justice cannot be bent and that it will not be buried. Find Karen Read not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
Then came Prosecutor Hank Brennan, painting a starkly different picture. He spoke in concrete terms, reminding the jurors of what he argued happened under heavy snow. Read's Lexus did strike John O'Keefe, and she fled. Brennan recounted a critical piece of evidence. When she called her friend in that very morning and said, "John's dead, I think he got hit by a plow." He asked the jury why she described it in that way if she had no idea what happened. And his answer was, because she knew that there was a collision, with a large motor vehicle, and she had to substitute. Brennan reminded the jurors of forensic clues. He described the shattered taillight shards found at the scene as remains of Read's SUV. He emphasized Read's own stunned reaction after the crash. Quoting testimony, he noted that the first responders heard her say, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." He even said the medics that boarded O'Keefe saw her crying and saying, "I hit him." He also played plenty of clips from Karen's media blitz, where she says, "Could I have hit him? Maybe I hit him. Maybe I clipped him." All this was stark contrast to what the defense is saying, and he argued that there was plenty of trauma on John O'Keefe, not on the outside of his body, but deadly nonetheless, inside his skull, combined with hypothermia. Brennan insists the narrative was clear. She made a decision in her Lexus with the shattered taillight debris field all over the front yard, and John O'Keefe left for dead. She made that choice. She did not call 911. She did not run to his aid. She made a decision about herself. In her Lexus, she drove away. That's what he said. Now, for me, I got a little side-eyed because I don't think, listening to this trial this whole time, that we saw that she made this supposed error or the supposed hit and consciously decided to drive away. And that's what Brennan is saying. The other thing I question is that he's also saying, or that Massachusetts is saying, that everything that the prosecution says has to be true, or you have to believe it beyond a reasonable doubt. And do we have to believe that? Can we just believe that she didn't know that she hit him and drove away? But if we have to believe everything that the Commonwealth puts forth, then this to me is questionable. Even when Brennan was trying to put together the cell phone data, he talked a lot about that in his closing arguments. He talked about changing the times in the system to fit into his timeline. He says, you can't change data. Data is data. But then he talks about changing the times to sync up to reflect the timeline. So in my opinion, I'm like, but you just changed the data. So can you change the data or can you not change the data? I guess you can change the data when it works in your favor. Also, at one point, Brennan said in his closing arguments that maybe John O'Keefe got hit and then stumbled to his final resting place, but I know he kind of had to pull that back, because that also doesn't make sense, because he hit his head. And if he hit his head and landed in his final resting place, he's not stumbling to his final resting place. So I didn't really get that. I think he kind of pulled it back at one point, but then I'm like, are you having a problem with your closing arguments? Did you not, read that a few times before you came up here to talk about it? Anyways, that's my own opinion. So I digress. Brennan also tried to knock down the defense's alternative theory involving Officer Higgins. He reminded the jurors that John and Brian Higgins had no adversarial relationship, no anger between them. And this is also where I'm like, but his girlfriend was texting him, and I don't think any guy is going to like that. So he says, there would be no fight. They would not get in a fight. That is ultimately like a trash bag theory. Ultimately, Brennan urged the jurors to hold Reed accountable for leaving O'Keefe to die. He ended with a point suggesting that her later decision to reverse into O'Keefe after the snow started was nothing less than second-degree murder. And with that, the court fell silent. After weeks of testimony, exhibits, and cross-examinations, both sides had delivered their final words. Defense attorney Jackson stood before the jury and reminded them that it was their duty not to guess, not to assume, but to judge only on what was proven. And prosecution says that don't believe these wild theories that John O'Keefe was hit and left alone in the snow, dying, needing help, and no one ever came. So Judge Cannoni then thanked the juror and gave them their instructions. She reminded them that emotion must not guide their decision, only evidence. That the Commonwealth bears the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and that the charges range from second-degree murder to involuntary manslaughter, and that it was up to them to determine where, if anywhere, Karen Reed's actions fit. Karen Reed sat at the defense table quiet, and the jury left the courtroom. The door shut behind them, and now, you guys, all we can do is wait. And we're waiting on pins and needles. Let me tell you, Margot has been texting me every single second, and we're waiting. So I'm Tabitha, and you've been listening to The Alternate, and keep listening so you can hear our final thoughts. So if you have not put the follow button, press the follow button, click the follow button, whatever you do, click it now, the little plus sign, and you'll get all of our stuff almost every single day. You guys, we have a lot of trials we're covering. This one is almost over, but we are wrapping up with Diddy, and we are also coming out with our final thoughts on Lori Vallow Daybell, and then Bryan Kohberger will be next big one that we will cover. We might cover a few others, so don't forget to follow us, and we wait.